Hi everybody, this is Food for Thought, episode number 3. Today I want to share some perspectives on and ideas on how there may be a link between consciousness, quantum physics, and psychology. And again, this is just sharing ideas. If it makes sense to you, give it some thought. A simplified explanation of quantum physics states that before something is measured, a quantum particle doesn't have a single definite state. It exists in a superposition, a blurry combination of all of its possible states. For example, it's in multiple locations at once. The act of observation, to observe or measure the particle's property, like its position, a physicist must interact with it, typically by bouncing another particle, like a photon, off of it and detecting the reflection. State change. This necessary interaction forces the particle to snap out of its superposition and choose one definite state. This is often called the collapse of the wave function. The observer effect in quantum physics is the principle that the act of measuring or observing a subatomic particle fundamentally changes its properties. This graphic is depicting the double slit experiment. That is the experiment that they use to determine that a particle can exist in two states at once. It can be a wave and a particle. It exists as a wave until it's observed, and then it collapses into a particle. If you're interested in this topic, and if you're not familiar with the double slit experiment, I would suggest looking on YouTube or doing some research on it. It's definitely well worth the time. I'm going to try to finish this off conceptually and contextually and give an example from a personal experience. I was taking my son, who was only 2 or 3 years old at the time, for one of his very first few haircuts at one of those kids' haircut places where you get to sit in a neat little airplane or Jeep or toy car type deal. So it's supposed to be a fun, happy experience. But it turns out we were about 2 or 3 minutes late for the appointment. And when we went to the counter to let the lady know that we were here, her response was, "Oh, so you're late?" I responded in a calm, apologetic tone, but her tone was not changing. It seemed like she was trying to provoke an altercation, like she was trying to mix it up. And I had looked around and noticed there was like nobody else there. So it's not like we were cutting into anybody's time or anything like that. So I kind of felt like it was a crossroad moment. Either I had to decide between mixing it up with her or remaining calm and just trying to keep the flow going. And having the additional factor of my son being there, and this being one of his very first haircut experiences, definitely not the optimal time to be mixing it up with somebody in a public setting, regardless. And add in the fact that my son was dreading getting his haircut. He absolutely hated it. So I think I just said something like, "Well, do you still have time for us today, or do we need to reschedule for another day?" And begrudgingly, she said, "No, come on back." And then after getting my son seated, she asked how we wanted his haircut, and I said, "We did come here once before, and we liked the way that the other lady did it, and I think she was going to put some notes in the computer." I'm not very good at explaining, how to cut his hair, but do you happen to have any notes from the last time? And she's kind of snappy. "No, they don't always put notes in." So I just explained it to the best of my ability, and then she got to work, but I didn't give off a drip or a drop of negative energy. And as she started cutting my son's hair, interacting with him seemingly started to, change her mood a little bit. She started to turn it around. She got to more of a neutral mind state, and then she slowly started becoming more friendly. And then I asked her how her day had been. And although I didn't realize it at the time, it seemed like me asking her that question gave her the opportunity to vent in a more constructive way. And come to find out, she had earlier that morning been on the phone with an insurance company because her boyfriend had been on, he's been really sick. He's got type 1 diabetes, and the medication is like super expensive, and then having to hassle with, fighting with the insurance companies and all that type of stuff. So then it's like, oh, okay, that's why she was in that type of a mood. And then from there, she was in a much better mood and even told me about where to get some deals on some meat packs and some vegetable packs at the local grocery store. So this is just food for thought. Hopefully this helps somebody. That interaction helped me a lot. I had some big aha moments that day because at the initial meeting with that lady, it was like a crossroads. And when you start looking into quantum mechanics, you start considering possibilities of like the multiverse and multiple timelines and things like that. if I would have chose the other route and decided to just mix it up with her, that, potentially could have been like choosing a different timeline. I know it would have been very traumatic for my son, and it would have made it even worse the next time trying to get his hair cut somewhere. So again, just sharing ideas, food for thought.